My name is Alex Johnson. I'm a med student. Man, she's really in the way. Don't get on the bus in a wheelchair. Read the room, lady. My heart froze at the unbelievable verbal abuse I heard on a crowded bus. Those words weren't directed at me, but at the beautiful woman in front of me. It was the day of my job interview at my first choice huge hospital. I had approached a woman in a wheelchair who was having trouble at the bus stop, and we got on the same bus together. I got off at the stop before hers, praying that the verbal abuse hadn't reached her ears. I said goodbye to the woman. And 2 hours later, during the actual interview, people like you are. The students who had hurled abuse at the woman earlier turned pale at the words from the interviewer. My name is Alex Johnson. I was very close to my sister. I loved my energetic and kind sister, but one day on her way back from club activities, she slipped and fell from the embankment into the river. Luckily her life wasn't in danger, but she badly fractured her leg. The doctor in charge did his best, but she couldn't fully recover, and my sister ended up in a wheelchair. No longer able to walk around freely, my sister grew more depressed day by day. To cheer her up, I would push her wheelchair and take her to lots of different places. When I turned 18 and could get my driver's license, I immediately got it and used my saved-up money from my part-time job to buy a used car. I customized it with a ramp so the wheelchair could easily get in and out. Now I can take you to even more places, Sophie. Sophia cried tears of joy seeing a car customized for her. I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful little brother. I need to be more positive for your sake too. Perhaps because I drove her to so many different places, she quickly regained her energy. Now she has enough leeway to even enjoy life in a wheelchair. Lately, handicrafts seem to have become her hobby. And this year, she gave me a handmade good luck charm for job hunting. You'll do great, Alex. Good luck. Yeah. Thanks, Sophie. Gripping the good luck charm she made, I headed to the final interview at my first choice huge hospital. When I got off at the transfer bus stop, the stop was packed with people heading to a nearby event that day. As I passed through the crowds, I happened to glance to the side and saw a woman in a wheelchair looking around with a troubled expression. A bus company employee was there to assist her in getting on the bus, but there was no one who seemed to be with her. Even if she could get on the bus like that, she would end up alone on a crowded bus. Where are you headed? Huh? If it's okay with you, I'll ride with you on the bus. When I gathered my courage and spoke to her, both the employee and the woman looked relieved. Looking closer, the woman had a very beautiful face. Her hair was trimmed evenly above her shoulders, and it had a nice sheen. Well then, I guess I'll take you up on that. Okay. With the help of the employee, I brought the woman to the wheelchair space on the bus. I moved the wheelchair to a spot where she could reach the handrail and firmly set the brake. You're used to this, aren't you? Yes. My sister uses a wheelchair. Your sister is lucky to have a little brother like you. I'm jealous, she said with a big smile, and I couldn't help but feel shy. The woman was getting off at the stop before mine, so we would ride together until then. Looking around, I saw a few students in recruiting suits who were probably taking the same interview. Among them were two students who kept glancing over at us. As soon as our eyes met, they leaned in close and started whispering to each other. I got a bad feeling and looked away from the students. Then I heard a loud tongue click. TCH. For real, she's super in the way. Don't get on the bus in a wheelchair. Read the room, lady. What's with that guy with her? Trying to show off what a good person he is. So cringe. Us college students who aren't as smart gotta score points like that, I guess. The words were clearly directed at me and the woman. Hearing them, I smiled at the woman to cover it up and said, Nice weather today, isn't it? Are you going out somewhere? The woman let out a wry laugh and replied, I'm fine, so don't worry about it. You just do what you want to do. Thank you. The students' voices had probably reached her ears. I slumped my shoulders, feeling down that this had happened after I had proudly offered to help her. But I wanted to do my final prep for the interview during this bus ride, so I took out the hospital materials and interview textbook, taking the woman up on her words. Then she asked, Are you going to an interview somewhere too? Oh, yes I am. Could you show me those materials for a sec? I handed the materials to the woman, and she pointed to the corner of the page. It was a page with an interview of the current hospital director. What he really values are these words. Remember them well. Okay, got it. Those words were only briefly mentioned in the interview, the kind you'd normally just skim over. Think hard about what you can do and give it your all. After the woman's emphatic words, I read it over several times to commit it to memory. When we reached the woman's stop, I pushed her wheelchair and got off with her, then quickly got back on the bus. I'm sure you'll do great. It'll go well. The woman gave me a smile as we parted ways. The bus doors closed and it slowly started moving. I watched the woman through the bus window for a while, and she seemed to take out her phone from her bag to contact someone, probably to arrange for a ride. I prayed that the woman would safely reach her destination and got my mind ready for the interview. And 2 hours later, as fate would have it, I ended up in the same interview group as the two students who had hurled abuse at us earlier. The two of them looked at me with nasty grins. During the self-introductions, they said they were from a quite prestigious private medical university. It was a university anyone would know the name of. I, on the other hand, was from a public university medical school with a higher acceptance rate than theirs. I felt like they laughed a little when they heard the name of my university during the self-introductions. But the interview proceeded without regard for any of that. The students from the prestigious university talked about their brilliant academic careers and self-promotion, captivating the interviewers. Overshadowed by them, I wasn't able to show my full potential. Now for the last question. Is it over already? I secretly fretted in my mind. At this rate, I'd probably get rejected. But the words from the interviewer blew away my dejection. If you saw someone in trouble on a crowded bus, how would you handle it? Let's start with you, Alex. The interviewer smiled at me. Remembering what had happened 2 hours ago, I started to speak. I would gather my courage and speak to the person in trouble. Just then, I remembered the words from the hospital director's interview that the woman had pointed out to me. When I read the director's interview, the words "think hard about what you can do and give it your all" stood out to me. I also want to think hard about what I can do and give it my all. What can I do? For example, on a crowded bus, just being in the crowd is probably difficult, so I would act as a wall to protect that person. As I answered without hesitation, the interviewer's smile deepened. And how would you handle it? The interviewer addressed the medical student from the prestigious university. With an affable smile, he replied, I would also help the person in trouble, just like him. I couldn't just ignore it. I would stay with the person until their stop. He said it as if he truly meant it from the heart, even though he had clicked his tongue at the sight of a person in trouble on the crowded bus earlier. But I couldn't say that here. And you? Yes. I would also offer assistance if I saw someone in trouble. I would be considerate so as not to make them feel uncomfortable while helping them. I would go with them to their stop and make sure they got off safely. The other student, Nate, also answered clearly and openly in a similar manner. But the interviewer said something shocking to him. But you two hurled verbal abuse at the woman in the wheelchair, didn't you? Huh? I'm talking about 2 hours ago. Alex actually helped someone in trouble, but you two did not. Confronted by the interviewer's words, the students could only flounder. I also opened my eyes wide in surprise, looking back and forth between the interviewer and the students. Do you remember what Alex said earlier? Think hard about what you can do and give it your all. That's the mindset the director values most. Is what you two can do clicking your tongue and hurling abuse at someone in trouble. The students turned deathly pale under the interviewer's interrogation, looking like they might collapse at any moment. You two are not fit for this hospital. No matter how brilliant your achievements, I don't want to work with people who can't lend a helping hand to those in need. The students couldn't say anything more and just hang their heads. And with that tumultuous end, the interview concluded. How did that interviewer know what had happened on the bus? Could it be they were on the same bus? But I couldn't confirm it now, so all I could do was wait for the interview results. And a few days later, what arrived for me was a job offer from that huge hospital. I knew you could do it, Alex. Sophie was overjoyed. That day, she and Mom made a full course of my favorite dishes. And on the day of the company entrance ceremony, all of my questions from the interview were answered at the entrance ceremony. Nice to meet you all. I look forward to working with you as colleagues from now on. Standing next to the director, who smiled on stage, was his secretary. It was the woman in the wheelchair who I had helped that day. After the ceremony, the woman introduced herself as the director's secretary, Emily Brown. Her face wasn't made public, but I had seen her name mentioned several times in the director's words in the brochure. To think that secretary was a woman. What surprised me even more was that after the entrance ceremony, an employee approached me and led me to a separate room where Brown was waiting, not in a wheelchair. "Welcome, Ms. Brown. It's good to see you again. I knew you would get hired." Apparently, she is the director's adopted daughter, though not related by blood. When she was in an adoption facility, the director had taken her in. And right then and there, Emily told me everything that had happened after that. After getting off the bus, Emily contacted the interviewer and explained what had happened on the bus. Knowing that, the interviewer put us in the same interview group. By the way, those 2 students were definitely rejected. I see. I let out a sigh of relief upon hearing those words. If those 2 had passed, they would have become my co-workers. I was really dreading that possibility. The director has high expectations for you. Please do your best. Yes, I will. It was an unexpected reunion, but being directly encouraged by Emily gave me a beast of energy. I'm thinking that once I work hard at this hospital and save up some money, I want to go on a trip with Sophie. The hotel we're planning to stay at is fully accessible, making it easy for Sophie in a wheelchair to get around. Imagining Sophie's delighted face, I throw myself into my work. Working can be tough at times, but if you have a dream you want to achieve, you can make it happen. Some time passed after that. I was leaving the hospital after my day shift. That's when I spotted Emily, whose wheelchair was stuck on the curb. "Emily." I ran over to her. Emily turned to face me with a relieved look. I pushed Emily's wheelchair. The tires seemed to be wedged in the curb, making it hard for her to get out while seated. "Thank you. You're a lifesaver." Saying that, Emily coolly turned to face me. "Where are you headed, Emily?" "I'm going this way. I'm taking the bus from Stapa." The direction Emily pointed in was the same as my route home. "Same here." "Really? Then let's go together." I walked beside Emily. It seemed she didn't commute by car. It was just my assumption, but I had thought being the director's daughter, getting dropped off by car would be the norm. In fact, there were lots of doctors' children at the med school I attended, and some of them had an incredible sense of money, with even their university transportation being in luxury cars. Since she was the daughter of such a huge hospital's director, I didn't think it would be odd for her to get around by car. But she wasn't like that. As if reading my mind, she chuckled. "You thought since I'm in a wheelchair, I'd get driven around." I flinched. I hadn't thought that far, but I did think it wouldn't be unusual for a rich man's daughter. Since there are more things I can do compared to others, I want to do everything I can on my own. "I see. Yes. So even though I can't drive, unlike other employees, I commute using public transportation just like them. Also, I don't want people to think I'm being favored as the secretary, so I make sure my treatment is the same as regular staff in every way." I understood. Emily was 26 years old. Apparently she had graduated from a well-known public university. Becoming a doctor was difficult, but she wanted to support the medical field in other ways, so she studied hard and joined the huge hospital as a regular employee. My father took me in when I was young and did so much for me. That's why I want to be useful to my father. That's wonderful. I'm sure your father is happy to have a daughter like you. We then got on the bus and got off at the same stop. It was the same stop we had gotten on during that job interview. I later realized it wasn't odd for our closest stations to be the same, but at the time I didn't think of that, and my heart raced thinking, is this fate? I was naturally drawn to Emily. I had spent middle and high school and science-focused classes at college prep schools with very few girls, like 6 girls out of 40 students. So I had no immunity to women. I have dated girls from other classes a few times, but they would always get jealous, like which is more important, studying or me. And I would get dumped a lot. I had always aspired to become a doctor, driven by a desire to help people like Sophie and to be like the doctor who treated Sophie's leg. So I had lived my life prioritizing studying. Of course, friendships and time with my girlfriend were important too, but if I had to rank my priorities, studying was number 1. but that doesn't mean I didn't care about my girlfriend at all. I treasured the short time I had with my girlfriend, and if she said you don't reply enough, reply faster, I would make some effort. But I turned my phone off when I was studying, and I completely ignored messages because I wanted to focus. But it's not like I didn't care about my girlfriend at all. However, it seems I could never quite get that point across to the girlfriends I had dated, and I got dumped every time. When I became a university student, I suddenly became popular with women, perhaps because of my med student status. Nothing about me had changed, so the sudden popularity almost made me distrust people. In the end, I started seeing everyone as being interested in me for shallow reasons like my status or label as a doctor-to-be, not for who I was inside. So I didn't have a girlfriend in university. In the first place, I don't know about other medical schools, but the one I attended was incredibly busy, so it might be more accurate to say I didn't have time for romance. And so, for the first time in years, I started chatting with a woman, Emily. My work life transformed after I started noticing Emily. The doctor's office and the director's office were on the same floor, so I would sometimes see Emily in the hallway. Every time, I started following her with my gaze. Emily's hair was a bit longer now, tied back in a single bunch. The nape of her neck was beautiful. My aura of happiness must have shown on my face, because Sophie commented on it when I got home. "Alex, you seem so lively lately." She was grinning. No way. I tried to play it off, but Sophie saw right through me. "But I'm happy for you. You've spent so much of your own time for my sake until now. I want you to pursue your own happiness from now on. Sophie, I'll show you that I can grasp happiness with my own strength too." Sophie had recently started working at a nearby company. It was an office job she had never challenged herself with before, so she seemed fired up about various things. Now that I had become a doctor with an irregular schedule, I could only take Sophie out for drives when our days off happened to align, but she was still overjoyed. But lately, she had started saying more things out of concern for me. "Alex, I'm sorry you have to spend your precious day off like this. You can just say no and turn me down on days it doesn't work out, okay?" She would say that, but our drives had become a part of my life that I didn't want to lose, and I genuinely enjoyed them too. For me, who had been single for years, interacting with Sophie was my only exchange with a woman my age. A lot of the trends I learned about came from info I got from Sophie. An irregular lifestyle inevitably makes you fall behind on trending music and fashion. Doctors across the country might scold me for saying that, but I was just clueless about trends in general. And so, about 6 months after I started working at the hospital, my direct supervisor, Dr. Mike Sanders, had started being harsh with me more often lately. He was a male doctor about 5 years older than me. "Alex, go make copies." "Yes, sir." At first I went along with it since he was my senior, but when I thought about it, we had plenty of medical office staff. Their job was to support the doctors, so shouldn't he be asking them, not me? In terms of division of duties, it probably wasn't good for me to take their work either. I fought that, but I reluctantly obeyed since it was Dr. Sanders' order. "Alex, staple these together." "Oh, I have to do my rounds now." When I glanced at the clock, Dr. Sanders yelled loudly, "Didn't you hear my order?" As I stood there at a loss, a female office staff member came over to me. "Dr. Johnson, I can take care of the stapling, so please go ahead to your rounds." "I'm sorry." As I tried to hand the stack of documents I got from Dr. Sanders to the office lady, he shouted I told Alex to do it. Dr. Sanders suddenly swatted the stack of papers with his hand. The office lady let out a short shriek. Papers scattered all over the place. I crouched down and started picking up the papers. The office lady tried to help, but Dr. Sanders said, "Alex, pick them up." Dr. Sanders glared at me. The office lady looked troubled, unsure what to do. "Don't worry, just get back to your work." When I said that, the office lady left. Because of that, I ended up being 10 minutes late to my rounds. The head nurse scolded me harshly, but I couldn't say it was Dr. Sanders' fault and I was at a loss. Seriously, you young folks are so lax about time. I really didn't want to be told that, but there was nothing I could do. That kind of thing continued day after day. And then I started hearing a certain rumor. Apparently, Dr. Sanders had confessed to Emily last year and got rejected. So I realized he must be jealous of me, who had been talking with Emily a lot lately. But even so, I couldn't be rude to Emily because of that, and above all, interacting with Emily was my greatest joy. And then, it was almost time for the first-year personnel evaluation. But my direct supervisor was Dr. Sanders. I wondered how it would go, but it seems my personnel evaluation was awful. I got called in by the HR manager. Dr. Johnson, it looks like your number of patients is half that of Dr. Sanders. What's going on? What? I was shocked. Certainly, for about 3 months after joining, there were times when I could only see about half as many patients as Dr. Sanders. I wasn't used to things yet, so I couldn't proceed with my work quickly. But I thought after that, I was able to see almost the same number of patients as him. Are you still not used to the job? Or do you have some worries outside of work? Wait a minute, I said to the HR manager. Isn't there some mistake? No, we calculate the numbers by extracting data from the attending physician field in the medical records, so there shouldn't be any errors. The medical records. Medical records can only be viewed by the doctors or a very limited number of office staff. Especially for the attending physician field, office staff don't have editing privileges, so I don't think there could be a mistake. That can't be right. Can you tell who the final editor of the medical records is? When I asked that, the HR manager made a puzzled face. I suppose we could find out if we asked the IT department staff. The HR manager had an openly annoyed expression. Then please ask the IT department to look into who the final editor of the medical records is. I can only think that my numbers have been reduced. But the HR manager was clearly looking for a reason to refuse. As I was fretting over what to do, a voice called out from behind me. Come on, manager. It might be a hassle, but personnel evaluations are important, right? Dr. Johnson doesn't seem to be lying either. You're right. All right then. Emily says she doesn't want people to be too conscious of the fact that she's the director's daughter, but for those around her, it's an undeniable truth. With just a word from her, the HR manager, Emily, and I somehow ended up going to the IT department. The final editor of the medical records listed as being handled by Dr. Sanders is Dr. Sanders, and for the ones handled by Dr. Johnson, it's Dr. Johnson. I knew it, I thought. Dr. Sanders had gone back and overwritten the attending physician field of the medical records for patients I was originally in charge of, changing it to his own name. I made that claim. If that's the case, it means Dr. Sanders has been overriding them. It was clear as day to me. However, the IT staff said, but Dr. Johnson, it's only natural for Dr. Sanders to be listed as the final editor of the medical records he's in charge of. I see. And that's the thing. It's natural for Dr. Sanders to be listed as the final editor of medical records where he's the attending physician. But from a third-party perspective, there's no way to tell if those were originally listed with Dr. Johnson as the attending physician and then overridden to Dr. Sanders, or if they had Dr. Sanders from the start. Then can't we see the edit history? I was desperate. If we could see the editing history, we would know if I was originally listed as the attending physician. That's what I thought, but we don't have that level of functionality. No way. They wouldn't budge. Just as I was about to slump my shoulders in defeat, it happened. I might be able to figure it out. Huh? Emily had raised her hand. I mean, I'm the one who made this hospital's medical record management system. What? I told you, didn't I? I studied because I wanted to be useful to my father. I thought I could make operations more efficient by developing systems, so I gained skills as an engineer. Things progressed quickly after that. When Emily analyzed the system, she figured it out right away. I knew it. This medical record was initially created with Dr. Johnson's ID, and then overridden with Dr. Sanders' ID at a later date. This one too, and this one. There are so many. Dr. Sanders' misconduct came to light through Emily's efforts. It was reported to the higher-ups, and Dr. Sanders was suspended. Then he voluntarily resigned during his suspension period. When I went to properly thank Emily, she said with a nonchalant expression, Dr. Sanders did what he did knowing that the electronic medical record system only shows the final editor. He had no idea he was dealing with a system analysis pro. I thanked her. Thank you so much, Emily. I wouldn't have been able to do anything without you. God is watching. You don't need to thank me at all, Alex. I only did what made sense. She laughed brazily. After that, I invited her out to dinner as a thank you. I'm well versed in wheelchair-accessible restaurants since I often go to them with Sophie. When I made a reservation at a fancy French restaurant, Emily was delighted. Of course, I went with non-alcoholic drinks. I make sure not to drink so I can respond whenever I'm called in. Our hospital has a system where doctors are assigned as the primary and secondary on-call, and the on-call doctors get called in when emergency patient care is needed. So on days when I'm not on call, I could drink, but since I'm still a newbie, I tried to be ready to handle anything just in case. Emily knew that, so she didn't say anything about me ordering a non-alcoholic drink. In fact, she matched me and also got a non-alcoholic drink. I hadn't even had any alcohol, but my face felt hot. I knew the reason. I had decided to confess to Emily today. I was already busy enough as a new doctor as it was. I didn't know when I'd be able to go out to eat with Emily again. And that's not all. If I missed this chance, I didn't know when I'd get another excuse to invite Emily out to dinner. I was watching for the right timing to say it. That's when it happened. Emily tucked a strand of hair she couldn't tie back behind her ear. That gesture made my heart skip a beat. And before I knew it, I was saying it. Emily, I like you. Huh? She looked dumbfounded. I buried my face, thinking I said it. I was scared to hear her response. If she turned me down, it would be really awkward afterward. It would be awkward when we saw each other at the hospital from now on. My heart was pounding like an alarm bell. And then, go on. Huh? When I lifted my face, she was smiling in front of me. That smile made me swoon again. I wanted to look down again out of embarrassment, but I held back and gazed into her eyes. And I said, Emily, my life changed after I met you. I look forward to going to work every day. You shine so brightly in my world. Please go out with me. I spoke quickly, but entirely in my own words. She stared at my face for a while. Then, yes, I'd love to. She gave me a beaming smile. I felt relieved as the tension left me. Then, after dating for 6 months, we decided to get married. The wedding ceremony and reception were all wheelchair accessible. Sophie was overjoyed, and she seemed to be crying at the reception. She congratulated me more than anyone. Alex, congrats. Thank you. Sophie hugged me. I bent down and hugged her. You're so kind, Alex. After you started devoting your time to me, I was worried you might not get married and just keep taking care of me. So that's how you felt. I learned a side of Sophie I never knew. Because you're kind. But I'm glad. Seeing you happy makes me the happiest, Alex. I'm so happy for you. I wish you and Emily a lifetime of happiness. Seeing Sophie's tears, I also broke down crying. I hope you find happiness too, Sophie. 1 year later, there was a new life growing in Emily's belly. I was going to be a father. Throughout my life so far, I've met all sorts of people, and I've been helped by so many people to get to where I am now. From now on, I want to help others even a little. I want to cherish and protect my beloved wife, child, father, mother, and sister. That's the life I want to live.